Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Neeti and this is Odd Stories YouTube channel. Well, before we get into podcasting today, let me just tell you what's up with me. So I'm working on two projects right now. Cannot reveal a lot of information about it because these are strange times, it's pandemic. You decide something and it turns out to be the other way. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed and I just hope that whatever I'm working on finally materializes. That's about me. Do you want to share your update? Please, you can leave in the comment section. Also, another thing, if you guys can help me with, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work on my YouTube channel now. If you guys have any tips or you think that I could get in touch with someone who can help me out there, then please drop in the comment section, or you can just reach out to us on Instagram and let us know of someone who can help us grow our YouTube. For now, coming back to podcasting. So today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic. A lot of people ask me, Neeti, how should we go about it? So I thought, why don't we create a video on that? Well, today's topic is series podcast versus unlimited podcast. Now, what is unlimited podcast and what is a series podcast? A series podcast is just like a Netflix series with season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. And when it comes to unlimited podcast is something like Star Plus serials, the K serials which we used to watch, which were like not numbered and they used to go on for years. Well, I am hoping that the podcast will not lose interest like those K serials over the period of time. People definitely put a lot of effort to bring out interesting content. Or you can say like YouTube vlogging, which people do every other day and they don't get into this thing. They don't come up with a frame like, okay, I'll do it for these many episodes and then I'll stop. Or like Odd Stories vlog, this one on podcasting. Now here also I've not limited my number of episodes. I would want to create content for as long as possible, as much of content I can create. So there is no end date to it. These are unlimited ones and the limited ones I discussed with you already. Now what we'll do is we'll quickly discuss a few examples of what kind of podcasts are series podcasts and what kind of podcasts are unlimited podcasts, and after that we will get into the pros and cons of each. So you stay tuned. Now let's get into some examples of series podcasts and then we will discuss the unlimited, I would say non-numbered podcast, because there's no specific name for that, so I just gave my own name to it. Anyways, if we talk about series podcasts, now what kind of podcasts are these series podcasts? Series podcasts could be a storytelling podcast, interview-based podcast, research-based podcast. So it could be a podcast series which will need a lot of research, or I would say, there's a lot of effort involved. For example, like calling people on your podcast, or it could be, a storytelling podcast where you have season 1 of a particular series, then you leave it on a cliffhanger, then it moves on to season 2. For example, if you compare it with video series, then especially on Netflix, you have Sacred Games. You always want to wait for this next season. Then you have Crown, and other interesting series. You would always want to see what's happening next, right? Similarly, if you put it in podcast format, there are various podcasts which are in the series format. For example, if we talk about storytelling podcasts, then one of the examples would be Ishq Bhi, Risk Bhi, which I've discussed a number of times. It's there on Avaz.com. Now that one was a Hindi podcast. If we talk about English podcasts, then we have In Strange Woods. Though that one is also a series podcast. Now, if we talk about a research-based podcast example, then we have The Big Fat Indian Ghotala. Again, it's a Spotify original. I've spoken about this podcast a lot. It's an amazing example of series podcast. They talk about some ghotalas, that is a few scams that has happened in India, and They do it for one season, then they take a break for a couple of months or more than that, and then they come back again with another season. Another example for series podcast, especially in interview podcast, would be No Sugarcoat with Pooja Dhingra. It's an interview-based podcast where Pooja Dhingra interviews a lot of celebrities related to the culinary world and beyond. Well, those were a few examples of series podcast. Now, if we talk about unlimited podcast, that is no fixed numbered episodes podcast. In that case, what kind of podcast would be in that category? Solo podcast, then there would be journaling podcast, then there could be, these bite-sized small podcasts. Another format could be in solo podcast only, that is a journaling one. So those are a few examples of unlimited podcasts. If we talk about examples, then Uncut Kritika. In that case also, you don't know for how long she's going to, continue with her podcast. Or then there's The Habit Coach. It's been on for so long and you see episodes every time. Or On Purpose with Jay Shetty is another example of unlimited or no fixed number of episodes podcasts. New outfit, new location. Well, I recorded the entire episode about podcast series and unlimited podcasts in one go, but then it tended to be too long, so we decided to cut in between. And today, as I've explained to you about what is podcast series and also what is an unlimited podcast, but in the next episode, we will discuss about the benefits as well as the issues. We will discuss the pros and cons of both kind of podcasts. For now, bye-bye. You better subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to learn more about podcasting, and please press the bell icon. Bye-bye.